This is the Zeppelin bombing they tried to cover up. On the 16th of December 1914, the unthinkable happened. 6 German battleships sailed across the North Sea and split into 2 groups as they approached the English coast. At around 8 a.m, the Coast Guard station at Scarborough was destroyed by the first of 500 shells that pounded the sleepy seaside resort. The old castle and town walls were blasted, then the barracks, thankfully only being used as a store. Churches, hotels, houses and shops across the town. The whole event only lasted for little over an hour, but 17 people lay dead, including a 14-month-old baby. In the meantime, the other ships laid mines and opened similar strikes on Whitby and Hartlepool. In less than a morning, a grand total of 137 people had been killed and 592 wounded, nearly all civilians. Britain was in shock. For the first time in centuries, our island nation had been breached by enemy fire. War was no longer distant, but had come quite literally to our doorsteps. Northamptonians, like the rest of the nation, were outraged, but could feel safe here in the Middle Shires, just about as far from the sea as it is possible to be. There would, as it turned out, be no more naval raids on our coast, but a new threat, hitherto unimaginable, was about to be unleashed. Just 1 month later, on the 19th of January 1915, 3 Zeppelin airships drifted into the skies over Norfolk. They were off course, having intended to attack Humberside. Great Yarmouth and King's Lynn suffered instead, 2 people being killed in each town, the former being a particular favourite with Northampton holidaymakers. Subsequent attacks sought out large industrial cities and ports, London heading the list. Northampton was a quiet country town of less than 100,000 souls in World War I. In military, industrial and economic terms, it was a relative backwater, but the unwieldy nature of Zeppelins meant that judgment in reaching targets was subject to luck and weather. Backwaters might find themselves on a deadly path, as with Yarmouth and King's Lynn. On the 19th of October 1917, Northampton accidentally fell victim to German bombs. The Zeppelin L-45 took off from her home station at Tondern near Germany's border with Denmark, in a convoy of 13 airships intent on bombing Sheffield, Manchester and Liverpool. It was a turbulent sea crossing, and life aboard was made even worse as she reached the coast and was forced to raise 20,000 feet to avoid fighter aircraft and anti-aircraft fire from the ground. The northerly wind were at gale force, and the crew began to suffer frostbite and the disorientation of altitude sickness. Carl Schurz, an officer of L-45's crew, later recalled, "We saw some lights, afterwards darkness. We tried to take wireless bearings from Germany. We couldn't obtain them." John Clifton commanded the anti-aircraft station at Dartford in Kent during 1916. Long after the war, he related his experiences to the Imperial War Museum. Raids only took place in the dark periods when there wasn't any moon, which lasted for about 10 or 12 days, and depending on the weather. If the weather was good, we'd probably get 6 or 7 raids in that period. Sometimes we'd get 2 or 3 nights running with raids. We always had to be on duty in the dark periods. When the moonlight returned, we were allowed to slack off a bit. Hammered by high winds, L-45 missed Sheffield and scudded uncontrollably through mist and fog. Shuz and the crew began to make out stretches of glinting light, indicating a railway line below. Meanwhile, on the ground, the station staff at Lamport, Stratton and Brixworth reported a Zeppelin passing overhead. L-45's first bomb was dropped on one of Mr. Thornton's fields in Kingswalk at about 10:45 p.m. Martin's Yard by Spencer Bridge was next, then Victoria Park, each bomb aimed at but missing the railway by a few yards. Another high explosive bomb was released close to Castle Station, then another landed in the garden of 17 Park Street, near the old Castle Inn. Westbridge Depot in the fields of Briar Hill received hits before the Zeppelin flew swiftly south and by chance found herself over London. Carl Schurz remembered. Now it was a searchlight, 2 searchlights, I counted 20, and we guessed it must be London, but no shot, we were unseen, and we could see the Thames now running before the wind with a full speed, and we must drop our bombs. We dropped the large bombs, they were 600-pounders, and I heard later on great bombs fell on Piccadilly Circus. The Zeppelin L-45 killed 7 people in Piccadilly Circus, mostly as they waited for buses. It killed dozens more before racing away across the Channel. But let's return to Northampton, where 22 bombs had landed. 21 had caused little damage, other than craters of varying sizes. One, however, probably intended for Castle Station, fell through the roof of 46 Parkwood Street, where Mrs. Eliza Gammons and her 13-year-old twin daughters, Gladys and Lily, lay asleep in the middle bedroom. It seems likely that Mrs. Eliza Gammons was killed instantly in her sleep. The front bedroom was occupied by Private Albert Baisley, his wife, Mrs. Gammons' daughter, and their 2 small children. Private Baisley stripped sheets and blankets from the beds and threw them to neighbours arriving below. Seeing Mrs. Gammons was beyond help, he carried the twins away and lowered all 4 children into the blankets held by the neighbours. Last out through the window, Private Baisley entered by the front door and extinguished the fire. An ambulance took the twins to the General Hospital, where Gladys died the following morning and Lily died a day later. An inquest held at the Guildhall the following week recorded death from burns due to the incendiary bomb dropped by enemy aircraft. The coroner praised Private Baisley's heroism in rescuing the 4 children. Mrs. Gammons and her twin daughters were buried next day in Dallington Cemetery. The mayor and corporation leading a large gathering of townsfolk paying their respects. However, the Gammons family's tragedy was quickly concealed by censorship. The military authorities, invoking the powers of the Defence of the Realm Act, refused any publication of details of the raid, inquest or funeral, and refused the Mayor, John Wood's, permission to promote a relief fund for the stricken family. The L-45 eventually landed in the far south east of France. where its commander ordered the crew to set it ablaze and then give themselves up as prisoners of war. German reports made no mention of Northampton, so the crew were oblivious to the tragedy they have caused in Jimmy's End. Zeppelin crews had been dubbed the Baby Killers since the first raid in 1915. Once again, young children had fallen victim to the terror from the skies, both here and in London. By the armistice, air raids by enemy planes and Zeppelins had caused 1,413 deaths and nearly 5,000 casualties in Britain. The October 1917 attack turned out to be the final Zeppelin raid of the war, and due to its nature became known as the Silent Raid. Perhaps silence is the greatest sadness of all. Silence imposed by the authorities at the time, and continuing silence as the fate of Eliza and young Gladys and Lily slipped away with the passing years. Now a century after the event, the family, St James Residents Association, Western Front Association, Northamptonshire, the Mayor's Office and St James Primary School have been working together to ensure that we will remember them. And remember them we will, guys. I appreciate you staying to watch another video, guys. Please like and subscribe. Appreciate the love and support. Peace out.